Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the soft sands of ancient Sumer, where justice wasn't just a courtroom affair, it was ritual, performance, and sometimes downright weird. You walk beneath a heavy night sky. The air is thick with heat that lingers long after the sun has gone, and the distant hum of temple chants carries over the rooftops like an old lullaby. You find yourself standing before the gates of a Sumerian ziggurat, towering and tiered like a giant stone wedding cake. The torches flicker, casting long shadows that make the structure seem taller than it already is. Mud brick walls rise high around you, etched with symbols you can't read, though they seem to watch you with judgmental curiosity. You don't speak Sumerian, but the silence speaks volumes. A guard wrapped in linen tilts his head and lets you pass. No one smiles, not in Ur, not at night, not when you're headed to court. Because justice here is an ancient thing. It's not about lawyers or paperwork or televised trials. No, here, it's about balance, about pleasing the gods, preserving honour, and occasionally making sure someone walks away with a goat instead of their pride. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You cross the threshold into the temple's inner courtyard. The moonlight glints off a polished copper statue of Enlil, god of wind and justice. Around it, worshippers whisper prayers through cupped hands. You're not here to pray though. You're here to witness something stranger than worship. Ancient punishment delivered with absolute unblinking solemnity. Everything smells of warm stone, incense, and something vaguely metallic. Maybe dried blood, or maybe just centuries of judgment soaked into the floor. You trail behind two temple scribes, their reed pens tucked behind their ears, clay tablets clutched to their chests. One of them glances back and sizes you up. You're not a threat. You're not a criminal. You're just present, an observer. But that doesn't make you safe. Justice in Sumer doesn't wait for a jury. It doesn't wait for your side of the story. It doesn't even always wait for evidence. If the gods have decided your fate, you'll feel it soon enough, perhaps by way of drowning, exile, or a goat giving you side-eye from across the courtroom. You pass through a long hallway with low ceilings and torch sconces that drip black wax like the room itself is crying. The walls are painted with scenes of punishment, one man being led by the nose with a fishhook, another bent double under the weight of a broken jar. None of them look particularly forgiven. Outside the main chamber, a woman kneels in the sand, arms raised to the sky. She chants something rhythmic, rocking slightly. A child tugs at her sleeve, but she doesn't seem to notice. She's been accused of speaking ill of the king's grain tax. Small mouth, big mistake. No one touches her. No one tells her it'll be okay. In Sumer, you suffer in public. Quietly, if possible. As you enter the great hall, everything goes quieter still. A vast stone room opens before you, the ceiling lost in darkness. A raised platform sits at the far end, flanked by two oil lamps that glow faintly gold. And there, sitting absolutely still, with hands folded in a pose of eerie calm, is the judge. He's draped in robes of faded red and wears a false beard made of intricately braided goat hair. A symbol of authority, not fashion. His face is lined like dried clay, and you get the sense that even if you spoke out of turn, he wouldn't blink. He would just gesture once and someone's fate would shift. He is called the Shukalma, the voice of the temple, the administrator of justice. Some say he fasts before major trials so that his judgments are unclouded. Others say he communes with a statue of Shamash, the sun god, who shines the light of truth. Historians still argue whether these rituals were just for show, or if the judges really believed themselves divine conduits. There's a low hum now, a sort of ambient buzzing from the crowd. You hadn't even realised the room was full, but dozens of people sit cross-legged along the walls, silent, watching. Trials are public affairs, not because of transparency, but because shame works best with an audience. Then, from behind a curtain, the accused is led out. A man in his middle years draped in simple flax cloth, eyes wide. He's accused of lying about land boundaries, moving a stone marker to gain 3 extra rows of barley. Not much, but enough to anger the temple accountants. A scribe steps forward and reads the charge in slow, deliberate syllables. The accused trembles but stays upright. You wonder if he'll be dunked, branded, or made to confess in front of Enlil's statue. The judge doesn't speak. Instead, he picks up a reed stylus and taps it twice against the edge of his tablet. That's the cue. A servant lights a bowl of incense and places it at the defendant's feet. The smoke curls upward, and everyone watches it. Seriously. If it drifts to the left, it means guilt. If it splits or spirals, the gods might be undecided. The smoke drifts straight up. Silence. Then, a sigh of relief from the man's wife in the crowd. The judge speaks just one word, then gestures. The punishment? A fine of 2 goats and 1 day sweeping temple floors. You feel your shoulders release tension you didn't know you were holding. This is only the beginning. The punishments get stranger, deeper, sometimes darker. Remember, this is the place where truth isn't found through testimony. It's baked, branded, cursed, or floated down a river. And the night? It's only just begun. You haven't moved from your place near the back wall, partly because it feels rude, and partly because your legs don't quite trust the idea of standing. The floor beneath you is warm, probably from the torches, or maybe from the sheer number of barefoot people who've passed through tonight, seeking either justice or revenge. Sometimes both. The trial has ended, and temple attendants lead the barley boundary man away. His fine will be paid in goats, which, let's be honest, might be the Sumerian version of a bank transfer. You hear murmurs rise again. A new trial is about to begin. This time, it's a woman. Not young, but not yet old, with strong arms and sharp eyes. She walks with pride, even as she's flanked by 2 guards. Her charge? Accusation of adultery, a serious offence in Sumer, though honestly, most things are serious here. Steal a fish? Serious. Step on sacred grain? Big trouble. Say the wrong thing during a lunar eclipse? Better hope you like communal pit labour. The judge nods to the scribe, who begins the formal declaration of charges in that deliberate rhythmic tone again. But this time, something new happens. The accused raises a hand. The room stills. This is rare. Speaking out before your guilt is weighed, brave, or foolish. She insists she's innocent. That she was framed by her husband's cousin, who wanted her punished for rejecting a marriage proposal back in the planting season. The crowd buzzes, low and scandalous. You can practically hear someone in the back going, "Ooh!" Now, in most places, this is where you'd expect some cross-examination, maybe some parchment evidence. But this is Sumer. So instead, the judge lifts his hand and points toward the courtyard. The trial will move outdoors. You're ushered along with the crowd through a narrow passage that opens into an open-air space beside the ziggurat. There, gleaming faintly under the moonlight, is the Euphrates River, its waters sluggish and heavy with silt. 2 priest attendants are already uncoiling ropes. You glance around. There's a shallow platform at the river's edge, and beside it, a large polished stone. Not symbolic. Very, very real. This is the site of the river trial. This particular form of judgment has a simple logic, if you can call it that. The accused is bound with cords and lowered into the river. If she sinks and drowns, well, perhaps she was guilty. But if she floats, the gods have spared her, and she is declared innocent. Yes, this is a real thing. It's even referenced in the code of ur-nammu, the oldest surviving law code we've found. Fringe as it sounds, it was standard for serious, unprovable cases. Historians still argue whether these dunkings were symbolic, like a spiritual washing of sins, or if the sinking actually meant you were presumed guilty, and your punishment was posthumously justified. You take a breath as the accused is led toward the water. She does not resist. She says something quietly, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. Her eyes find the judge, who nods once, and then turns his gaze toward the moon. The priests lower her into the river. You half expect her to scream or thrash, but she doesn't. She stays still, letting the water claim her. Seconds pass, then her head bobs back to the surface, gasping, sputtering, blinking away muddy water. She's floating. The crowd erupts. Some cheer, some groan in disappointment, as if the verdict were a sports match. The priests haul her out with surprising gentleness. Her hair clings to her shoulders. Her linen robe is plastered to her skin, but she is alive. The judge rises. Yes, he actually stands, and declares her innocent. There is no apology, no compensation, just the strange dignity of surviving. You wonder how many others didn't. Someone behind you mutters about the gods being in a good mood tonight. You're not sure what that means, but you're learning that here, guilt and innocence often depend more on luck and on breath control than on logic. As she's wrapped in a dry robe and led away, another figure steps forward from the crowd. A man this time, younger, nervous. He holds his arms tightly to his chest. He's here not as an accused, but as an accuser. He claims his neighbour enchanted his oxen. Yes, enchanted. As in, used supernatural forces to make them stop pulling the plough during harvest. You wait for someone to laugh. No one does. You're starting to see the full spectrum of Sumerian justice, from theft to adultery to full-on magical cow sabotage. The judge listens, the scribe writes, the priests whisper, and then the same ruling is given. River test. This time, it's the accused who gets the ropes. The crowd moves with anticipation now. People whisper bets. Someone passes a handful of dried figs like it's popcorn. The man, slim, pale, barely taller than the water jars, doesn't protest. He simply bows and walks with the priest toward the river. You half expect the same result. But he doesn't float. He sinks like a sunstone. When they pull him out, it's already too late. His mouth is open, his eyes unfocused. The priest checks his pulse anyway, perhaps more out of ritual than hope. The accuser looks down, then away. Justice has been served, but it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like theatre, like ritual, like trying to make sense of chaos with ropes and rivers and ritualized drowning. Still, no one questions it, not out loud. You walk back toward the ziggurat with the others. The moon has moved. The night deepens. You wonder, if the gods change their minds tomorrow, do they send someone to undo these verdicts? You suspect not. You're back inside the court now, slightly damp from the river mist and more than slightly unsettled. The floor feels harder than before, the torchlight harsher. But there's no pause. The procession of justice never really stops here. It just pivots to its next oddity. A new figure steps forward. An older man with a heavy brow and a tunic stained with oil. He's clearly from the merchant district. You hear murmurs around the room. This one's been caught stealing temple bread. Now, stealing from the temple is not the same as swiping a loaf from a neighbour's oven. This is sacred bread, baked by priestesses and blessed in the name of the harvest gods. You don't eat it. You definitely don't sneak it home wrapped in your cloak. Still, you wonder what could possibly happen to a hungry old merchant. A fine? Public shame? No. This time, the judge orders a very specific sentence. The broken pot walk. You're ushered outside again, but not to the river. This time, the crowd gathers around the edge of the main market square, where vendors have packed up their wares for the night. The stars overhead are sharp and cold, like cuneiform carved into velvet. In the centre of the square stands a young boy holding a large clay pot. It's freshly smashed, on purpose, and the shards have been arranged into a small pile. Each piece has been etched with a brief inscription. You recognise a few of the symbols, words like thief, dishonoured, temple, and bread. The punishment is simple. The merchant must carry this bundle of shards in a woven basket and walk slowly through the square, making sure everyone sees. He must announce his crime at each corner. 4 corners, 4 stops, one very long evening of humiliation. You wince as he lifts the basket. The clay rattles like bones. This wasn't about pain, it was about memory, shame, public theatre. These punishments weren't necessarily meant to wound the body, but they knew exactly how to bruise a reputation. One older woman mutters that she saw this same ritual when she was a child. Same location, different thief, same walk. You wonder if it works, if this kind of shame actually prevents future crimes, or if people just get sneakier about hiding the bread. Historians still argue whether the public nature of Sumerian punishment was intended for deterrence, or served more as a warning to the gods that justice was, at least, attempted. As the man completes his second turn, a group of children follow at a distance, giggling and whispering. They're not mocking, just curious. For them, this is just part of city life, maybe even entertaining. It's strange, though. For all the ceremonial cruelty, there's an odd sense of ritualized balance to it all. Like every action is part of a long preordained script. The scribes never look surprised. The judge never flinches. Everyone plays their role. Back inside, another case has already begun. You settle in again, grateful that this one doesn't involve ropes or riverbeds. This time, it's about a missing mule. The accused? A young farmer who claims the animal was stolen. The accuser? A neighbour who says he saw the farmer lead the mule away not 2 nights ago. Here's where things get unexpectedly hairy. Instead of arguing facts, the court orders something much weirder. Both men must appear before the judge the next morning, but with freshly cut hair. At first, this seems almost comedic, but it turns out in Sumerian culture, hair wasn't just about grooming. It was status, identity, pride. Cutting it was symbolic of submission, shame, resetting. And in this case, the hair cutting would serve as both test and punishment. Here's how. The 2 men would present their cut locks, tied in woven string. The judge would examine the strands, looking for signs of ritual cleanliness. Had they cut them properly? With respect. If one man presented tangled, sloppy strands, while the others were neat and respectful, well, guess who probably told the truth? It sounds ridiculous. Like judging a courtroom confession by who brought the neatest lunch. But this was a culture where symbolism held weight, where hair was sacred and image was intertwined with truth. There's a fringe theory, only whispered by a few modern scholars, that this type of ritual was a kind of early psychological test, that nervous liars would mangle their cuts, while confident truth-tellers would stay precise. You kind of love that theory, even if it's just ancient guesswork wrapped in ritual scissors. By the next morning, the court will have its hair, and the judge will comb through it, literally and metaphorically. For now, the crowd is buzzing. This one's less intense than the others. No dunking, no branding. Just a strangely symbolic grooming appointment. But the older woman next to you snorts and mutters, "He better not lie with that crooked fringe." You stifle a laugh. The scribes are already preparing fresh clay tablets to record the upcoming decision. You notice they don't waste time with paper, because there is no paper. They etch every ruling into slabs of clay, then leave them to dry in the courtyard sun. Some of these records still exist today, cracked, half buried, still bearing the echoes of arguments over goats, hair, and temple pastries. You lean back against the cool wall, letting the hum of the crowd wash over you. There's a rhythm to this justice, a strange mix of logic and superstition. You get the sense that in Sumer, guilt isn't something you argue. It's something you wear, walk, float, or cut, and tomorrow there'll be even stranger judgments waiting. But for now, the night continues, and so does your seat in this endless courtroom of baked mud and soft injustice. The crowd filters back into the great hall like water seeping into stone grooves, quiet, expectant, and already prepared for the next strange judgment. You're not sure if it's the torchlight playing tricks on your mind, or if your body's just adjusted to the dim glow, but the walls seem closer now, the shadows deeper. You find your usual spot along the edge, safely out of the way, but close enough to catch every raised eyebrow and fumbled excuse. You hear the next case before you see it. A rattle, a hiss of rope pulled tight, and then the clop of something wooden being dragged across stone. You lean forward. What rolls in isn't a criminal, but a large, rounded clay oven. Cold, cracked from centuries of use, and mounted on a wooden sled. The murmurs start before the scribe even reads the charges. This one's going to be peculiar. The accused is a baker, or was. He stands beside the oven, barefoot, arms folded tightly as though holding himself together. He's been accused of blasphemy, allegedly making jokes about the temple's sacred barley offerings. A joke about barley. You suddenly realise how far you are from home, where the worst result of a bad joke might be losing a few followers, not your ability to walk upright. The judge hears the charges and nods once. A priest steps forward and gestures to the oven. This isn't an instrument of death. It's a symbol, a ritual space. The punishment? The baker must sit inside the oven. Not while it's lit, thankfully, but still. In Sumer, the oven held a dual symbolism, birth and purification. Clay is baked, bread is transformed, sin too must be rebaked. Historians still argue whether this punishment was metaphorical repentance, or just public shaming in a particularly dramatic container. The baker climbs in with practiced caution. Clearly this has been done before. His body disappears into the belly of the kiln-like vessel, and only his head remains visible, sticking out from the front like a loaf refusing to rise. The priest sprinkles barley flour across the oven's top, almost lovingly, and then intones a soft chant. A scribe records the moment, as though this scene of man in pot were just another normal Tuesday judgment. You can't help but wonder what the joke was. Maybe something about soggy bread offerings or a priest burning the grain. But that's the thing about these courts. Intent doesn't always matter. It's all about symbolism, appearances, and keeping the gods from thinking you're getting too casual. The baker is released after what seems like an eternity, though in reality it's probably just a few minutes. He emerges covered in flour dust, shame sticking to him like sweat. No words, just a slow trudge out of the hall. The next case is already unfolding. This time, the punishment isn't metaphorical at all, it's deeply agricultural. A farmer has been caught falsifying crop records. He claimed 3 baskets of millet but only produced 2. The temple accountants noticed. They always do. You're beginning to suspect they're the real gods here. The sentence, a donation to the granary, and not just of millet. He's required to give 2 goats, a basket of barley, and a set of bronze tools to the temple storehouse, but not before presenting them publicly. So here's how this works. He's led in by 2 servants, each dragging one of the goats. A child follows with the barley basket on their head, and behind them, an older man carries the gleaming tools. The whole thing looks like a parody of a wedding procession. But this isn't generosity, it's restitution, and it's staged. You watch as the farmer is made to kneel and declare his guilt. Not to the judge, but to the granary doors. Seriously. He speaks directly to the carved wooden doors, decorated with images of wheat, gods, and fat smiling goats. One of the goats bleats, unimpressed. A fringe interpretation among scholars is that these types of punishments serve 2 purposes: replenishment of temple stores and a dramatic warning to others who might try similar tricks. You can imagine it working. There's something humbling about having to talk to a giant wooden grain cupboard while your goat loudly regrets all of your life choices beside you. The temple scribes inscribe the offering into their clay record tablets. The tools are inspected and nodded at approvingly, and then the judgment is complete. No whips, no exile, just public admission and forced generosity. You find that oddly humane, except for the goats. They look absolutely furious. Next up, something a little darker. A woman stands at the edge of the court. Her crime isn't theft. It's not even blasphemy. She's been accused of cursing a midwife. Yes, cursing. Not cursing at her, mind you. Actually cursing her. Like incantations and spells and ominous chanting under the moonlight. Apparently, the midwife's daughter fell ill after an argument with this woman. Coincidence? Maybe. But in Sumer, when coincidence hurts someone important, it becomes an accusation. There's no river dunking this time. Instead, the judge calls for a tablet sentence. This is one of the weirder ones. A scribe is summoned. He unrolls a mat and begins carving the accused's name, alongside the curse itself, into a rectangular clay tablet. This isn't evidence, it's the punishment. Once the tablet is finished, it's held up and read aloud. Then it's taken outside, buried under the steps of the midwife's home. This, in Sumerian culture, is a curse reversal, a way to trap the bad energy, contain it beneath the victim's house, and hopefully keep it from spreading. Historians still debate whether people believed the tablet absorbed the curse, or if it was simply a public shaming method with magical overtones. Either way, the woman doesn't resist. She watches her name get carved in silence, the only sound being the soft scrape of stylus against clay. You can't help but think about what it means to have your crime literally etched into the earth beneath your neighbour's feet. Eternal. Forgotten only when erosion decides it's time. As the scribe finishes, the priest lifts the tablet high, reads the name once more and hands it off for burial. The woman turns and walks away. No chains, no fire. Just a weight she'll carry long after the clay has crumbled. You're starting to feel the rhythm now. Punishment isn't just pain here, it's memory, ritual, shame that sticks harder than scars, and the night, it's still far from over. By now your legs are growing numb from sitting on cold stone, but you don't dare shift too much. Everyone else around you stays eerily still, and you're starting to suspect that fidgeting might be considered a microcrime here. The hall has quieted again. That always means something strange is coming. The judge gestures toward the entrance. 2 guards drag in a man, reluctantly this time. Not the usual stoic submission. He's wriggling, protesting in Sumerian, pleading with his eyes, though his mouth stays shut. That, ironically, may be part of the problem. The charge is read aloud. impersonating a priest, which in this part of the world is less about cosplay and more about divine fraud. The man had allegedly donned ceremonial robes during a recent festival and accepted barley offerings on behalf of the goddess Inanna. One scribe deadpans, "He even blessed the wrong side of the altar." You can feel the crowd's mood shift. This was bold and stupid, very stupid. The punishment? Mutilation. Specifically, nasal removal. Yes, you heard that right. In Sumer, certain crimes, especially ones involving impersonation or spiritual deception, were punished with surgical symbolism. The nose, considered a marker of personal dignity and divine breath, was sometimes sliced as a way to cut off one's connection to the gods. You wince as the sentence is confirmed. There's a whisper of disbelief around the room, but no outcry. This is, after all, ancient Mesopotamia, not exactly known for leniency. Historians still debate whether these nasal punishments were always carried out to full severity, or if sometimes the threat alone was used to shame the offender into exile. Fringe theories suggest that some convicted individuals were merely marked with dye on the nose, a kind of social branding less permanent, more theatrical. But tonight there is no dye. The man is dragged toward a small wooden bench near the judge's platform. A priest steps forward, carrying a thin, curved blade. You turn your eyes away. Most of the crowd does. It's not fear exactly, it's reverence. As if justice requires some collective looking away, a surrender of sight in order to maintain balance. The man's screams are brief, then silence, then the rush of footsteps as he's carried away to be tended or discarded. You're not sure which. And just like that, the court continues. There's barely time to recover before the next figure is announced. This one, thankfully, is upright, dignified, even calm. She wears temple colours and walks with a quiet poise. She's not accused. She's part of the sentence. The case? A young man convicted of destroying a communal water vessel during a drunken brawl. No one was injured, but the vessel was sacred, dedicated to Enki, the water god. The punishment? Something known as the guilt statue ritual. You tilt your head. This isn't one you've seen yet. Here's how it works. A clay statue, roughly human in shape, is brought into the court. It's crude. Thick arms, round belly, lopsided eyes, but unmistakably humanoid. The accused stands before it while a priestess smears it with sacred oil, whispering incantations the whole time. The belief is that the statue absorbs the guilt of the offender, that through this symbolic anointing the burden of the crime transfers into the clay. The offender, now emptied of guilt, is allowed to walk free, but the statue must then be destroyed in private by temple officials. It's part theatre, part therapy, part cosmic reset button. Modern historians are fascinated by this ritual. Some say it reflects an early form of restorative justice, a chance for symbolic cleansing. Others argue it was more about optics, offering a comforting illusion of spiritual fairness while maintaining social order. Tonight the young man kneels, the statue is oiled. The priestess hums gently, rhythmically, dipping her fingers again and again into a bowl of cedar-scented oil. The room is silent. You expect the young man to look ashamed. He doesn't. He looks relieved. When the priestess finishes, she touches her hand to the floor, a grounding gesture, and nods to the judge. That's it. No fines, no exile. His sentence has been absorbed by mud and belief. You think about that for a while. Maybe justice isn't always about who suffers. Maybe sometimes it's about who agrees to carry the weight. Or maybe that's just the cedar oil talking. Just as you're drifting into your thoughts, another case is called. This time, a rather minor dispute. 2 men, 1 donkey, and an argument over whose field it wandered into and how many figs it ate while trespassing. There are no goats dragged in this time, no ovens or chanting. Instead, the judge orders the temple dance. You blink. Yes, you heard that right. The punishment? The guilty party must perform a barefoot dance in the temple courtyard, publicly, in silence, wearing wristbells. It's not graceful, it's not festive, it's awkward, slow, and absolutely humiliating. The man found guilty, based on witness testimony and hilariously a fig-stained cloth, is led outside. You follow along with the curious crowd. The courtyard has been cleared. The wristbells are already tied in place, tiny bronze loops that jingle in sharp contrast to the surrounding hush. He begins, left foot, right foot, spin, shuffle, again. There's no music, just the sound of his soles against dusty stone and the jingle of guilt. It's oddly poetic. Ridiculous, yes, but somehow effective. You can't imagine anyone watching this and thinking, I'd like to experience that too. The crowd stays respectfully quiet. A few smother grins, but no one laughs. That would be inappropriate. In Sumer, justice isn't always about pain. It's often about display, a living warning, a walking, jingling, fig-related cautionary tale. When the dance is done, the man bows deeply, steps aside, and quietly puts his sandals back on. You catch a glimpse of his face, flushed, tired, a little embarrassed, but also lighter. Maybe shame, when wrapped in enough ceremony, can also be release. You settle back along the wall, letting the ambient hum of the courtyard flow back around you. In this place, under this moon, justice continues like a strange, never-ending play, and tonight you're still in the audience. As the courtyard empties, the scent of incense lingers like an afterthought in the still night air. A few children dart between the columns, whispering to each other and giggling about the dance. You stay seated, your legs crossed on smooth stone, watching the flickering torchlight cast long shadows that seem to whisper their own quiet judgments. The mood feels softer now, but you've learned not to trust that. Inside, the next case is ready. The accused stands tall, arms folded, an older man with sun-leathered skin and eyes that seem more annoyed than afraid. He's a landowner, judging by the fringe on his tunic. He's here because someone drew a boundary stone through his melon patch. Actually, no, that's not quite right. He's the one who moved the stone. Just a little, maybe 4 feet, enough to turn a disputed strip of land into a convenient expansion of his property. In any modern courtroom, this would be a long debate over property law. In Sumer, it's about stones, sacred ones, markers blessed by priests, inscribed with divine seals and meant to be immutable. Moving them isn't just petty, it's borderline heresy. The judge listens, nods once, and orders exile. There's a sharp inhale from the crowd. Exile here doesn't mean go home and don't come back for a few days. It means pack up your family, your sheep, and your favourite rug and start walking. Now, before nightfall if possible. The man protests, his voice rises, echoing against the stone columns. But it's useless. The judge gestures, and 2 guards step forward, not with weapons, but with a large rectangular stone. It's a boundary marker, the same type he moved. He's made to kneel beside it. One of the priests reads aloud from its inscription, a blessing of protection, a curse upon those who tamper with it, and a beautifully dramatic line about bones whitening in the sun. Then the guard uses a reed stylus to carve a single mark beside the script, an addition that denotes exile, not for future readers, for the gods. Historians still debate whether these markers were truly believed to carry curses, or if the inscriptions served more as a public psychological deterrent. Either way, nobody messed with them lightly. The man is led away, not shackled, not beaten, just watched, closely. The crowd parts for him, murmuring. By morning, he'll be beyond the river. By next week, someone else will own the melon patch. You glance at the boundary stone before it's rolled back into storage. It gleams faintly under torchlight, as if amused. The next case is weirder. Yes, even after goat dances and oven sitting, this one makes you raise your eyebrows. A young man stands accused of lying under oath, but not just any oath. He swore falsely in the name of Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, which means, brace yourself, the court now requires him to undergo the oath of boiling beer. This is exactly what it sounds like, and also not at all what you expect. The setup is already in place. A large clay pot of barley beer bubbling gently over a fire at the edge of the hall. The pot hisses and spits foam, and the smell hits you immediately, thick, yeasty, and slightly sour. Someone near you whispers, "It's the goddess watching." Here's how it works. The accused must drink a small ladleful of the boiling, well, near boiling beer. If he burns, gags, or reacts visibly, he's guilty. If he drinks it calmly, he's protected by Ninkasi, and therefore innocent. Yes, it's a divine immunity test, with extra flavour. A few scholars have dismissed this as superstition, but others argue it was a clever pressure tactic. Nervous liars might flinch or fumble, while calm, confident truth-tellers could handle the sip. A Mesopotamian lie detector, if you will, minus the electrodes, plus a splash of third-degree burns. The young man steps forward. You can see the tension in his jaw, but his hands don't shake. A priest hands him the ladle. The beer steams. He raises it, tilts it back, drinks. There's a collective silence. Then, nothing. No scream. No flinch. Just a long exhale and the faintest smirk. The judge nods. Innocent. Or at least protected by the goddess of fermentation. You wonder how many people lie successfully because they rehearse with warm tea the night before. The pot is covered, the trial ends, the beer simmers down, unloved. But the theatrics continue. Next case. Two brothers arguing over livestock ownership. Both claim a particular ewe as theirs. There's no proof, no witnesses, and no tags because, well, it's Sumer. There's just the sheep munching idly in the courtyard, oblivious to the drama. The judge raises a hand and calls for a mud duel. Wait. What? Oh yes. Apparently, when facts fail and tempers flare, Sumerian courts occasionally sanctioned what you could call legally supervised messiness. A good old-fashioned mud fight. The rules are simple. Remove sandals, step into the marked square and resolve the matter physically but not violently. Think shoving, flinging, tugging. No fists, just humiliation. And mud. Lots of mud. The crowd comes alive for this one. Two men enter, both grumbling, sleeves rolled up. The sheep is tethered to a post like a bored referee. Someone throws the first handful. You don't look away. You can't. It's like watching two ancient accountants settle a dispute through interpretive dance and agricultural slurry. The duel lasts about 10 minutes. By the end, one brother is clearly the crowd favourite, mostly because he's covered in less mud and still has one eyebrow. The judge calls it. Ownership goes to the less bedraggled brother. Probably not how you imagined inheritance law, but here, it's as valid as anything. You think back to that dance punishment, to the goat procession, to the boiling beer. In this world, truth isn't hidden in documents or uncovered by lawyers. It's performed, revealed in how you drink, walk, or wrestle in wet dirt. There's a beauty to it, messy, sometimes harsh, but always memorable. As the court resets, you sit quietly, letting the strange theatre of ancient justice wash over you. You wonder what sentence will come next, and whether it will require sandals, styluses, or sheep. The stone floor under you is beginning to feel like part of your spine, but you're hooked now, lulled not just by the low murmurs of the crowd or the sway of torchlight, but by the sheer unpredictability of Sumerian justice. One moment it's beer trials, the next it's interpretive mud flinging. The next case is called, and it's refreshingly normal at first glance. Two men step forward, both from the artisan district by the looks of their dyed tunics and calloused hands. The dispute? One of them owes the other 3 measures of barley and hasn't delivered in over a month. Simple debt. You brace for the usual, a goat fine, or perhaps public shame involving fig branches or chanting. Instead, the judge rules. Repayment will be made, in livestock, and not just any livestock. The man must hand over his cousin's goat. You blink. Yes, you heard that right. Not his goat, his cousin's. And not because the cousin was involved. Nope. The idea is that the debt can be settled through the extended household, which in Sumer was considered a tightly woven economic unit. If you screw up, your cousin pays, or your uncle, or your neighbour if he's particularly unlucky and socially adjacent. The man protests, of course, but the judge is unmoved. The court is not interested in excuses, it wants balance, and if that means your cousin's goat becomes the peace offering, so be it. This wasn't unusual. In fact, Sumerian courts often used household-based punishments that blurred individual accountability. Historians still debate whether this system discouraged wrongdoing or just led to some extremely awkward family dinners. As the goat is led in by a very unhappy teenager, likely the cousin himself, the crowd chuckles softly. Even the goat looks annoyed. You suspect this isn't his first rodeo. The animal is handed off, the debt settled, and the 2 men bow. Just like that, the case is closed. But something is happening behind the judge now. 2 scribes are whispering, heads bent over a large clay tablet that looks older and darker than the usual court records. The judge gestures for quiet. The next case is more serious. A woman, young, thin, barefoot, is led in under guard. She clutches something in her hands, a small clay object, roughly shaped, perhaps a charm. She's been accused of witchcraft, specifically hexing the city grain counters. Now, witchcraft is a loaded term here. Sumerians didn't exactly use that word, but the accusation carries weight. The claim is that she buried clay figurines outside the granary walls, each one etched with cuneiform symbols and pierced with a thorn. It's not just bad vibes. That's deliberate intent to spiritually disrupt the grain economy, and that is very frowned upon. The scribe reads the accusation, his voice slightly trembling. Even he seems uneasy. Curses weren't taken lightly here. The judge nods solemnly. Then comes the sentence, curse tablet punishment. Here's how it works. Instead of branding or imprisonment, the offender's name is inscribed on a clay tablet, but not in praise, nor even as a criminal record. It's a curse tablet, meant to follow her. You watch as a new scribe begins carving, her name, the offence, and a line of ominous invocations that loosely translate to, may her crops rot, and her sandals always squeak. Once finished, the tablet will be publicly displayed, likely near the city gates or outside the temple. Everyone who passes will read it, or have it read to them. And yes, it's a bit theatrical. But in a culture where writing held divine significance, having your name fused with a curse wasn't just social embarrassment, it was existential. Names mattered. Ink, or clay in this case, bound you in ways few could afford to ignore. There's a fringe belief among scholars that some of these curse tablets were later reclaimed, dug up and ritually washed clean in river ceremonies. A spiritual untagging, if you will. But tonight, this tablet won't be washed. As the carving finishes, the judge taps the clay 3 times. Finality. The woman is escorted out, still clutching her little charm. You wonder if she thinks it might still work. Maybe she believes it failed her, or maybe she knows it never worked to begin with, and that the real magic was just fear. You shift your weight as another figure enters the hall, a boy this time. No more than 15. His head is shaved clean, likely part of an earlier punishment. He stands awkwardly, avoiding everyone's eyes. He's accused of public disrespect toward a temple statue. Apparently he flicked a pebble at it during a festival parade. Not ideal behaviour for any era, but here, deeply offensive. The judge's voice is low. He doesn't look angry, just disappointed. The kind of tone that makes you feel guilt in your fingernails. The punishment, a week's service to the temple, cleaning altars and carving oath tablets under supervision. No exile, no branding, just clay and silence. It seems surprisingly mild. But then you realise it's reformative. He's being folded into the system, made to write his own oaths, carve the records, see what justice feels like from the scribe's side. Historians argue about whether such sentences were truly compassionate or just efficient ways to create more scribes. Either way it works. The boy looks stunned, maybe even relieved. He bows deeply. No tears, no drama, just quiet gratitude. You catch a glimpse of the tablet he'll be working on. It's not for a curse, not for a fine, just an oath. You swear to uphold peace. You promise to record true accounts. You agree not to flick pebbles at anyone divine, real or imagined. You almost smile. It's moments like this that make Sumerian justice feel, dare you say it, kind? Well, occasionally. Then again, the next punishment might involve hot reeds and facial tattoos, so maybe don't get too cozy just yet. The air inside the temple court is growing warmer. Maybe it's the torch smoke thickening near the ceiling, or maybe the intensity of what you've witnessed has seeped into your skin. The judgments have become stranger, sharper, more ritualized, as if each verdict now carries a little extra weight, a little less hesitation. And now comes another. This case involves a merchant. Not poor, not particularly wealthy, but unlucky. He stands in the centre of the hall, with his arms straight at his sides, eyes down as a scribe reads aloud the charge, uttering false testimony in a land dispute. Not just lying under oath, and not just to people, but to the gods. You can practically hear the invisible thunderclouds gathering over his head. The judge listens silently. You've noticed by now he rarely speaks more than a sentence or two. Justice here is quiet, heavy, intentional. Then comes the sentence, branding by burnt reed. You don't breathe for a second. Neither does the man. Here's how it works. The offender's guilt is recorded with a hot reed stylus, applied directly to the forearm. It leaves a burn, not just a scar. Sometimes the mark takes the shape of a cuneiform symbol, others just a line. But in either case, it's a permanent reminder. This arm carried lies. These hands served falsehood. You watch as the priest-judge lights a narrow reed in the ceremonial fire bowl, its tip glowing orange, bending slightly under the heat. The scribe approaches the man and grips his arm, not roughly but firmly. There's no struggling. That would only make it worse. The branding is fast. A brief hiss, a sharp intake of breath from the merchant, and then silence. The room waits. No applause. No jeers. Only the faint scent of charred skin drifting through ancient stone. Historians have argued for decades whether these brands were meant to be visible marks of shame, or functioned more like early administrative records, bodily receipts for crimes committed. Fringe interpretations even claim some of these markings carried magical weight, meant to lock the crime inside the flesh. You believe all of it. After what you've seen, how could you not? The branded man is dismissed. Not humiliated, not scorned, just released. Like a clay tablet returned to storage, slightly chipped, but still part of the archive. Before the scent even fades, the next case begins, and it's a deeply unsettling one. The accused is a young woman, calm, poised, wrapped in deep blue linen. Her hair is plaited in temple style, but her eyes are heavy. She's not accused of theft, not gossip, not blasphemy. She's been sentenced for a spiritual transgression, specifically for disturbing a tomb during a lunar ritual. Details are sparse. Apparently she entered a family crypt, hers in fact, on the night of the new moon, and left behind offerings that didn't match ritual standards. Some say she burned garlic and juniper in the wrong order. Others claim she whispered a name that should have remained silent. Whatever the truth, the temple has deemed her ritually impure. The punishment? Tomb sleep. You've never heard of this one. And neither has the couple sitting beside you. They exchange nervous glances. Here's the sentence. The accused must spend one full night in the very crypt she disturbed. No guard, no torch, no companions, just her, the bones of her ancestors, and whatever gods or spirits care to stop by. The belief is that this will reset the balance. The spirits, if angered, may forgive. If not, well, she won't make the same mistake twice, or possibly ever again. Historians still argue whether this was a symbolic gesture, or if the punishment was expected to have psychological or even spiritual consequences. A few clay tablets suggest that those who emerged often returned changed, quieter, reverent, or occasionally unstable. You imagine the air in a Sumerian tomb, stale, dry, saturated with the scent of salt and stone, the silence so thick it becomes its own kind of noise. She accepts the sentence with a slight bow, not afraid, at least not visibly. By nightfall, she'll descend the crypt steps, curl beside the carved sarcophagus of a great-grandmother or long-dead uncle, and wait for morning, or whatever comes first. You shift again, trying to shake the image, but the ritual continues. The next accused is already waiting. This one's almost theatrical. A man drenched in sweat claims that his neighbour accused him falsely of poisoning a well. The neighbour denies it. The two have been at odds for months. Water access is sacred after all, life depends on it. With no proof and no witnesses, the judge calls for an ash ritual. You haven't seen this before either. A large square of sand is prepared in the centre of the court. Over it, a scribe sprinkles fine grey ash, carefully spreading it into a soft layer. On this ash, the accused is told to walk in a circle, not run, not stomp. Walk, slow, deliberate even. Here's the idea. If your feet disturb the ash too violently, it reveals inner guilt. If your footprints are light, your soul is clear. Think of it as crime scene forensics meets interpretive dance. And no, they don't measure it scientifically. They just watch. The man removes his sandals, steps onto the ash, and walks the prescribed pattern. Everyone leans forward just a little. Not enough to break ritual, but enough to admit curiosity. He finishes, steps back. The judge examines the footprints. They're normal, not particularly heavy, not too scattered. Verdict? Innocent, but just barely. He's warned to stay away from the neighbour's well for a full planting season. Not punishment, a precaution. The ash is swept up ceremonially, dumped into a side urn. The court resets, the night stretches on. Each case, each punishment, each strange performance etches itself deeper into your memory. You think of the man branded with a reed, the woman preparing to sleep beside bones, the one who nearly lost a goat to debt. And you realise something. Justice here isn't static, it's alive, it breathes, it walks in circles, dances in courtyards, sleeps in tombs, and drinks boiling beer to prove a point. And you, the ever-watchful outsider, are starting to dream in cuneiform. You don't remember when the torchlight stopped bothering your eyes. Somewhere between the ash dance and the tomb sleep sentence, the flicker became comforting, like a heartbeat in flame. Everything's quieter now. The court is thinning slightly, but the judgments press on, as if time itself bends to the rhythm of this ancient place. You lean back against the cool stone wall, just in time to see a young man escorted into the circle. His face is pale, his mouth tight. The scribe beside him seems uncomfortable too. This next punishment is one of the more notorious ones, one that even the priests whisper about. The charge, slander against a temple scribe, and the punishment. You hear it murmured before it's spoken aloud, cutting of the nose. You freeze. Didn't you already see this? Not quite. That earlier punishment was about impersonating a priest. This one is about dishonour. In Sumer, the nose was more than just cartilage. It symbolised dignity, social breadth, and the ability to face the gods. To lose your nose was to lose face, literally and spiritually. But here's the twist. This time, there's a chance to avoid the knife. The judge offers an alternative. The accused may choose a substitute sentence, public humiliation and the clay mouth ritual. You lean forward. Here's how it works. If the man chooses the ritual, he must place a wad of clay into his mouth, clean, temple-approved clay, and stand silently in the square, unable to speak while a priestess recites his offence to the crowd. No defence, no rebuttal, just silence. If he breaks the ritual by spitting out the clay, the original sentence, nasal removal, will be enforced immediately. There's a tense silence. Then the man nods. He chooses the clay. A small bowl of clay is prepared and shaped into a thick oval, roughly the size of a thumb. A priestess offers it. He opens his mouth and accepts it, pressing it between his teeth. He doesn't look ashamed, just determined. And then the reading begins. The priestess's voice is calm, almost gentle, as she recites his words. He claimed the scribe had miscounted grain. He said the priest's wife paid him with lies. He told the market vendor that the temple kept back offerings. Each sentence is slow, clear. The man stands still. The clay stays put. A child near you whispers, "He'll choke," but he doesn't. 15 minutes pass, maybe more, and then, finally, the priestess ends with a chant of closure, one line repeated 3 times. May the mouth of clay swallow the breath of falsehood. The crowd murmurs. The man removes the clay and drops it into a small urn. He bows. The judge waves him away. He leaves whole, but not unchanged. Historians still argue whether this ritual was symbolic punishment or an actual method of psychological reprogramming, literally tasting silence, swallowing shame. Either way, it's unforgettable. As the court resets, another figure steps in, a tall man in ceremonial garb, not an accused, a witness. This next case is oddly festive, but justice here always comes with unexpected trimmings. A woman is brought forward. She's older, wearing thick rings on every finger, and walks with a sharp, confident gait. Her offence? Wearing false jewellery during a sacred feast. Now, today that might earn you some eye rolls. Here, it's a crime. Sacred festivals required offerings, not deception. And imitation jewellery, especially passed off as temple gifts, was a form of spiritual fraud. So what's the punishment? You blink when you hear it. Dance of the accused, round 2, but this time with symbols. She's to perform a slow walk through the temple courtyard, wearing the fake jewellery, followed by attendants holding placards that display what the jewellery should have been. You watch as the procession begins. She walks in deliberate steps, head bowed, arms raised to display each bangle and bauble. Behind her, 2 young scribes carry wooden boards painted with gold leaf, turquoise and lapis, images of what she should have offered. It's not brutal, but it's clever, shaming without cruelty. A mobile contrast between fraud and honesty. One scholar once called this punishment as education, a way to teach the crowd about correct offerings while reinforcing honesty and style, apparently. She completes her walk with grace. At the end, the jewellery is collected, placed in a bowl, and ceremonially crushed by a temple servant using a stone mallet. The fragments are swept up and added to the temple mortar. Even dishonour is recycled. Before you can process all of this, the next punishment rolls in, literally. A boy, perhaps no older than 12, is brought forward. His crime? Hurling dung at a scribe's doorway? Classic prank. Terrible idea. The judge doesn't seem angry, just amused. He's seen this before. The sentence? A mild one by Sumerian standards, but still public. Scraping duty. For 3 days, the boy will clean the temple's outer walls using a dull bronze scraper and scented water. Not inside, outside, where every passerby can see. The twist? He must wear a small dung-coloured tunic and a placard around his neck that reads, roughly translated, "What goes out must come back." You snort quietly. Someone else does too. Even the judge smiles. Just a little. The punishment begins immediately. A servant ties the placard gently around the boy's neck. He looks embarrassed but not destroyed. You get the sense that years from now, he'll tell this story to his grandchildren and laugh. It's a rare light moment, a strange mercy tucked between reeds and branding. But you're not done yet. Another man steps forward, visibly nervous. His crime isn't comical, it's serious. He failed to deliver an offering on his dead father's anniversary. In Sumer, that's not just neglect, it's spiritual abandonment. You don't just honour the living, you stay loyal to the dead. The sentence? Sleep beneath the temple platform, one night, alone. No fire, no food, no contact. Just him. The cold ground, and the silence of forgotten ancestors. You hear someone behind you whisper, "The dead will whisper back." You're not sure if they're joking. Historians still debate whether this was symbolic penance, or if it was believed the spirits truly watched and judged the sleeper. Either way, it's haunting. The man nods. He bows to the judge. He's already bracing for the darkness. You watch as a servant leads him to the entrance of the temple's lower chambers. The night deepens, judgment continues, and through it all, you remain. An invisible guest in a world where justice breathes in clay, dances in shame, and whispers under stone. You shift your weight again, carefully so your joints don't pop in the echoing silence of the temple court. The marble-cool floor presses into your legs like time itself. Around you, the murmurs of onlookers have dimmed, replaced by that strange tension that always precedes a punishment that's more ritual than reason. The judge races his reed stylus and gestures. Another trial is underway. 2 figures enter together, oddly calm for what's about to unfold. A woman in modest linen robes stands before the court, accused of interfering in a grain-tithing ritual. The issue? She added her own name to a community grain list, effectively stealing the temple's offering credit. But the case is not a simple theft. It's a spiritual transference. She took a blessing meant for the whole district. That's not just fraud. It's metaphysical theft. A crime against the balance between mortals and the divine. The punishment handed down? The guilt statue ritual, again. But this time, there's a twist. Instead of a simple clay figure, a full-sized, life-mimicking statue has been prepared. Crafted by a sculptor weeks in advance, these cases don't come up often, but when they do, the temple is ready. The statue is eerily accurate. Same braids, same crooked shoulder, even the same faint scar on her chin. She gasps when she sees it, and you feel a cold ripple down your back. It's like watching someone confront their own ghost. A priest anoints the statue with thick oil, frankincense mixed with cedar resin. It gleams in the torchlight as the priest chants the woman's full name and offence slowly and clearly. She stands still, arms folded tightly, watching as her clay likeness receives the burden of her guilt. It's not a joke, not symbolic in a light-hearted way. This is as close to a soul swap as it gets in ancient Mesopotamia. Once the oiling is complete, the statue is draped in red cloth, sealed in a basket, and carried out the eastern gate. It will be broken at dawn. Historians still argue whether this ritual was meant to absorb guilt or simply isolate it, to turn wrongdoing into a tangible thing and then erase it. A fringe theory suggests that Sumerians believed a part of the accused's actual essence entered the statue, which is why breaking it had to be done in private, respectfully, and with specific incantations. You're not sure whether that's true, But you do know this. No one looks relieved when it's over. The woman walks away, her back straight but her eyes hollow. There's a quiet pause in the room now, and then something altogether strange. A call is made for the courtroom goat. You think maybe you misheard, but no, a boy enters, leading a black goat on a woven reed leash. The goat, expressionless as only goats can be, is led to a raised platform beside the judge. This, you soon learn, is the goat oracle ritual. When the court cannot reach a verdict, when witnesses conflict, when the accused and accuser are both respected, when the air seems thick with uncertainty, the goat decides. Here's how. 2 bowls are placed before the animal, one marked with a cuneiform for guilty, the other innocent. Each bowl is filled with fresh grain, identical to the human eye. The goat is set loose. Whichever bowl it eats from first seals the judgment. You barely suppress a laugh. It feels absurd. Yet the room takes it deadly seriously. The case? A temple singer accused of stealing a silver hairpin from her own sister. No witnesses, no evidence, just suspicion and tension. The bowls are placed. The goat hesitates. Then without fanfare it trots toward the innocent bowl and starts munching. A low exhale moves through the crowd, like someone just released a breath they've been holding for a season. Verdict delivered, the sister bows, face unreadable. The singer is released. Is it justice? Who knows? But no one questions the goat. Historians are baffled by this one. Some argue it's metaphor, a way to preserve social peace by outsourcing tough calls to chance. Others insist the goat represented divine will channeled through nature's simplicity. A few fringe texts even record similar trials using pigs, though that trend did not last long. The goat is escorted out to light applause. You suspect he's done this before. Just when you think the absurdity has peaked, another man enters. Middle-aged, with hands stained from working with clay, probably a potter or mason. He's accused of mocking a sacred omen. Apparently he laughed during an eclipse. Loudly, in public. In Sumer, eclipses were no joke. They were sacred messages from the heavens. To laugh in their shadow was to spit in the face of divine mystery. The sentence, a poetic one. Silence as punishment. He must spend 3 full days in isolation, unable to speak, surrounded by whispering priests who will repeat his offence softly at regular intervals. Not threats, not lectures, just a steady whisper. He laughed at the sky. It sounds like something from a dream, he nods. Doesn't speak, which might already be part of the ritual. The priests surround him and lead him through a narrow door in the rear wall. You won't see him again for a while. When he returns, his voice might sound different, or quieter, or not at all. Silence isn't just the absence of sound here, it's a corrective force. Some modern scholars believe the Sumerians thought sound itself had spiritual mass. Words mattered. Misused words had weight. And sometimes, the only way to unburden them was to stop using them. And now, finally, a familiar figure. The boy who danced in the earlier punishment. This time brought back not for a crime, but for a reward. Turns out, after completing his punishment, he stayed at the temple, helped clean, repaired broken benches, even translated a prayer tablet for a visiting priest. The court calls this balance offering. A formal thank you from the temple for restored harmony. His reward? A fresh tunic, a carved clay seal with his name, and a small handful of dried dates. The crowd actually claps this time. The judge smiles softly, just once. Not all justice here is punishment. Sometimes it's acknowledgement, a balancing act that ends with sweetness. The dates are passed to him in a folded cloth. He bows, grinning, and walks out, lighter than anyone who entered today. The room settles. You sit in the lingering stillness, heart quiet, mind full of statues, goats, whispered offences, and mouths filled with clay. And still, we're not even halfway through. The torchlight dims for a moment, just a flicker, and your breath catches, half expecting some divine presence to sweep through the court and rearrange all the verdicts. But no, it's just the oil running low. A servant adjusts the wick, and the golden glow returns, casting long shadows like tired ghosts across the stone walls. You almost forget where you are until the next accused is called. This one is strange before it even begins. A tall man, broad-shouldered, wearing what looks like ceremonial jewellery, steps into the judgment space. But he's smiling, grinning actually. That's not the usual vibe in this place. The charge, mocking the high priest's haircut during a spring festival, and not in private either, publicly during a procession in front of at least 24 people. He apparently compared the priest's hair to a frightened onion with too many secrets. You're impressed, not just by the creativity, but by the fact that he's still standing. Now, in a society where hierarchy and sacred presentation matter more than barley itself, this kind of insult isn't just rude, it's destabilizing. Embarrassing a priest is like poking the whole cosmic order in the eye, so, the punishment? The judge, keeping a perfectly straight face, orders the man to perform the courtroom dance of the accused. Again, yes, but this one? Much, much worse, because it includes bells. Not just wrist bells this time, but ankle bells, hip bells, and a ridiculous headdress with tiny bronze rattles that jingle every time he nods. He must dance slowly in a full circle around the hall, while the scribe reads out his insult, 3 times, each time louder. The goal isn't cruelty, it's theatre, restoration through spectacle. And here's the twist. He must not laugh. Not once. You can't tell if the real punishment is for him or for you, because the entire court is holding in nervous giggles. Even the goat handler from earlier bites his knuckle. The music starts. Slow drums, nothing fancy. The man begins to dance. It's somewhere between interpretive movement and a cat walking across hot stones. The bells jingle, his hips shake, his headdress flops comically with each twirl. Then the scribe speaks. He said the priest's hair resembled an onion afraid of honesty. A wheeze escapes from someone in the back. A priest elbows them. The man keeps going, arms raised, ankles jingling. 3 full revolutions of the courtroom, 3 increasingly dramatic retellings of the insult. He doesn't crack, doesn't smile, and when it's done, he bows so deeply his bells collide. The judge nods. Balance has been restored. Historians still debate whether this particular punishment was ceremonial humiliation or a kind of sanctioned satire, a brief space where comedy served justice. A fringe theory suggests it may have helped absorb public tension after unpopular rituals, a societal vent, if you will. Either way, you're grateful for the moment of levity, but it doesn't last long. The next figure steps in, a teenage girl, barefoot, holding her sandals in her hands like a child clutches a doll. She's been charged with singing a morning song on a feast day, a major taboo. It wasn't malicious. She sang alone, in a courtyard, near sundown. But a priest overheard the lyrics. The song was meant for funerals, and that particular day was for celebration. Mixing them was seen as summoning sorrow to the living, a kind of spiritual cross-contamination. The punishment? Not pain, not exile. She must sing again. But this time, the right song, in the right place, in front of everyone. And she must wear a white veil, not to hide her, but to remind others that joy can be reclaimed. You feel something stir as she's led to the centre of the hall. The scribe hands her a small clay tablet, etched with verses of a hymn to Nanshi, the goddess of justice and dreams. She glances at it, then begins. Her voice is soft, wavering at first, but it steadies, clear, high, almost crystalline. It doesn't echo, it glides across the stone. The song speaks of balance, of forgiveness, of rivers returning to dry fields. You understand none of the words, but all of the meaning. When she finishes, no one claps, no one moves. There is only stillness. Then the judge speaks, for the first time in a long while. He says, "Let this be the end of sorrow." And you believe him. The girl bows, still veiled, and walks out, her sandals swinging in her fingers. Next, a strange little procession enters, a middle-aged man pushing a cart with what looks like a large sack tied shut with reeds. The charge? Spilling imported wine meant for temple rites, not on purpose. But carelessness doesn't matter much when the wine was sacred and the temple was expecting guests. His sentence? Public apology through offerings. But the offering isn't grain, or silver, or even goats. It's sand. 4 large sacks of clean temple-blessed sand. Here's the logic. The wine that was spilled soaked into the earth. It was lost. So now, he must give sand back to the temple, to symbolically fill what was emptied. and not just drop it off. He must walk from the edge of the city to the temple entrance, pouring sand behind him as he walks, creating a path of restoration. It's oddly beautiful. So he does, slowly, pouring handfuls of sand in a neat trail that winds around courtyards, between trees, across stone thresholds. People watch in silence. No one mocks. This is ritual. Sand back into the earth, balance in reverse. A fringe theory claims that some of these sand offerings were later used in sacred brickmaking, temples built on the very offerings given in apology. Whether that's true or not, the image is powerful. You wonder how long his trail of sand will last. Hours? Days? Until the wind decides forgiveness has taken root. The evening draws on. The temple smells of cedar and smoke and something sweet now, probably from the dried dates passed earlier. But it also smells of dusty resolve, of things both broken and mended. You've seen shame, kindness, laughter, songs, dance, bells, clay, goat-based verdicts, and yet there's still more waiting in this ancient hall. The judge shifts in his seat. The next case is ready. By now, the shadows in the courtroom are longer than the pillars that cast them. The torches hiss softly in their sconces, and the hum of quiet breathing, dozens of people gathered for something ancient and serious, has become part of the architecture. The court never really empties. Justice here is a living ritual, and everyone, it seems, wants to see what happens next. You sit straighter as a young man steps forward. He's barely 20, maybe less, with calloused hands and fresh bruises. The charge, fighting in the temple garden. It doesn't sound serious until you learn who he fought. A scribe with a stylus during record-keeping hours. The details are murky, something about a miscounted loan, a promised grain delivery that never arrived, and a bruised ego. But in Sumer, striking a scribe is nearly a theological offence. They don't just write, they channel divine order onto clay. So, the sentence? Exile by boundary stone. It's not permanent, not exactly, but it's symbolic, and in a culture that loves symbols, that makes it weighty. Here's how it works. A boundary stone, tall, rectangular, marked with divine warnings, is carried into the courtroom. This one is old. You can tell by the worn inscriptions and moss stains. The stone is set upright in the centre of the floor, and the accused must stand beside it, hand pressed to its surface, while his sentence is read aloud. He will be exiled for one full moon cycle, unable to return to the city, forbidden from passing any marked border until the next new moon. The scribe, his eye still swollen, watches silently. The judge recites the punishment, and the man bows, pressing his forehead to the stone. Then he turns and walks out without a word. The stone stays, a reminder to the rest of us. Historians often debate whether these temporary exiles were enforced through physical patrols or just social agreement. It's said that in some cities people would simply refuse to speak to an exiled individual, making their return spiritually invalid until the period had passed. The next case is announced before the stone has even been rolled aside. Two women step forward together, sisters by the look of them. They argue over the ownership of a loom, not just any loom, but a wedding loom, part of their mother's dowry, passed down like an heirloom, tangled in generations of obligation and sentiment. Both claim it. Neither will back down. There's no will, no record, and the family elder too old to remember. The judge nods, then gestures to the temple's central walkway. The punishment, or maybe the solution, is the thread test. A loom is brought out, not the disputed one, but a communal frame used for rituals. Each sister is given equal thread, equal tools, equal time. They are to weave side by side, each producing the same pattern, watched by two priestesses. No speaking, no help. The one whose cloth is more even, more faithful to the design, will be deemed the rightful heir. You can't decide if this is genius or madness, and yet it works. Weaving was sacred in Sumer. Precision meant devotion. Mistakes were interpreted not just as clumsy fingers, but as signs from the gods. The sisters begin. Their fingers move quickly, instinctively. You see years of practice in the way they handle the reed combs, the taut strings, the shifting threads. Time passes. A priest taps a bronze bell. The weaving ends. The cloths are held up, examined under torchlight. One is slightly looser, slightly uneven. The verdict is given, ownership granted, no shouting, no tears, just a deep exhale from the older sister and a resigned nod from the younger. Somehow, the loom has spoken. You wonder how many modern families would benefit from weaving contests instead of courtrooms. And now, something darker. A man enters wearing heavy wool despite the heat. He carries nothing, speaks nothing. He's already been judged. His punishment is about to begin. He's been sentenced to the oath of boiling beer again. But unlike the earlier man, who passed the test with calm dignity, this one has already failed it once. Now he must take a second oath, not to prove innocence but to restore balance. This version is harsher. The beer is not just warm, it's boiling. The cup, thick and jagged, burns the hand as much as the lips, but he must drink. Not all of it, just enough to make it clear that he accepts divine justice. He does. You watch his throat tighten as he swallows. He doesn't scream, but he weeps. And still, this is not cruelty. It's cleansing. A physical price for a spiritual betrayal. A reminder scorched into the body. Historians still argue if the second boiling was a real legal tear, or if this story was invented by later scribes to scare students into honesty. Tonight, it is very real. The beer is poured out. The man is given a cloth for his mouth. He stumbles out of the chamber with dignity intact, if not his taste buds. And now an elder woman steps forward, leaning on a reed cane but with eyes sharp as a reed stylus. Her charge? None. She's here to bring a petition, a rare occurrence. She requests that her late husband's curse tablet be destroyed. You blink. Apparently, decades ago he was branded for blasphemy. His name etched in clay and buried near the temple gate. She has served her penance, raised their children and honoured the gods. Now she wants that name cleared. The court murmurs, "This is delicate." The judge listens. Then, after a pause, he nods. Permission is granted, but with one condition. She must retrieve the tablet herself. A scribe leads her outside. She kneels, digs in the old dust, finds it. A dark rectangle of dried clay, brittle but whole. She lifts it, then smashes it on the ground. The sound is sharper than thunder. A priest declares, "The name is free." And it is. There's something beautiful about that. A justice system that can both burn and forgive. You sit back, heart full. The torchlight feels warmer now, the court quieter, gentler. But the judge is still seated, and justice, as always, continues. You start to wonder if time works differently here. The torches haven't burned down, the judge hasn't blinked, and though people come and go, the court continues as if it exists outside of day and night, like a tide of truth that never quite recedes. A man enters now barefoot, eyes wide, his tunic soaked with sweat. He looks like he's just sprinted from the city gates, and maybe he has. The scribe reads the charge aloud. False oath under the god Enlil's name. A big one. But before the judge can even issue a verdict, the man begins pleading. Not with words, but with ritual. He falls to his knees, places his hands palm down on the earth, and waits. The court stills. This is the sign of requesting a third chance trial, a rare option in Sumerian justice, reserved only for those who can swear again, under more dangerous conditions, and sure enough, the judge grants it. Quietly. Without drama. The test? A second attempt at truth, this time before a bubbling pot of beer infused with chili and ginger. Yes, chili. They grew it. They brewed with it. They punished with it. The scribe prepares a thick, warm draught, a kind of truth potion. If he lies again, the gods will punish his stomach. Violently. He drinks, slowly, and waits. The next part is less spiritual, more digestive. He must sit for 2 hours without incident. Any distress is considered divine rejection of his oath. You watch, half horrified, half amused. The man turns pink, then pale, then greenish, and yet he endures. The priest nods. He is miraculously absolved. A fringe theory among historians is that these gut-based trials were a way to use natural physiology as divine proof, an ancient polygraph test by way of painful intestinal honesty. You make a note to never lie in a place where the beer bites back. The court flows onward. A woman now, elderly and graceful, enters holding a bundle wrapped in flax cloth. The scribe announces her request to clear her family's name of a long-past theft. She does not ask for a verdict, only for ritual restitution. She unwraps the bundle. Inside are 4 small jars of preserved honey, 2 lengths of dyed wool, and a carved wooden spoon. The items are placed on the temple altar. The judge nods, and a priest reads aloud from a cracked clay tablet, a theft from 50 years ago, recorded in shaky cuneiform. A cousin, now dead, had stolen temple incense. The items are accepted. The record is closed, not erased, but stamped with a balance-fulfilled symbol. Justice in Sumer is rarely about revenge. It's about math, equal weights, debts paid whether in goats, shame, silence or honey. As the woman bows and leaves, the judge signals again. Now comes a louder case. 2 boys, both maybe 13, both furious, both covered in ash. Apparently one blamed the other for trampling a shrine sand drawing. Accidentally or not, the result was a smudged divine symbol. The priestesses were not amused. With no witnesses and both boys shouting different versions of the story, the judge calls for a ritual game. This one, throwing pebbles into a bowl, sounds harmless, but it's high stakes. Each boy gets 3 pebbles and 1 chance per throw. The bowl is placed 10 steps away. If both miss more than they land, both are guilty. If one lands all 3, innocent. If neither do well, mutual punishment, cleaning duty. It's like marbles, with spiritual consequences. First boy, 2 hits, 1 miss. Second boy, 3 hits. The bowl sings with each clink. Verdict: first boy, guilty of clumsiness, not malice. He'll be fined 1 hour of shrine sweeping barefoot under priestess supervision. He sighs, then shrugs. Justice isn't always heavy. Sometimes it's a game you're just not good at. You wonder how many gods approve of this logic. Probably depends on the aim. Next, a man wearing a priest's amulet enters. But something's off. His shoulders slump. His fingers twitch. He's been summoned, not accused. The charge belongs to his apprentice, who's gone missing, and taken with him 3 sacred scrolls and a silver ring. This case is odd because no one knows where the apprentice is, which means someone must take on the guilt, at least temporarily. The judge assigns it to the master. Until the apprentice returns, the priest will carry the burden, represented by a sand-weighted mantle. It's ceremonial. A long cloth soaked in water filled with fine temple sand, then wrapped over the shoulders. Heavy, cold. It hangs low. He must wear it in the temple courtyard at dawn and dusk for 6 days. It will remind everyone, not of what he did, but what he's responsible for. If the apprentice returns, the weight transfers. If not, the sand becomes part of the master's offering at season's end. A fringe belief among modern scholars is that this practice helped reinforce mentorship as more than academic. It was spiritual, legal, karmic. Responsibility didn't end with teaching. It ended with balance. As the priest bows under the weight of the mantle, you feel a pang of something deeper. This wasn't punishment. It was duty, made visible. Suddenly there's a strange energy in the room. 2 women, identical twins, are ushered in. One has been accused of using her sister's identity to receive double rations during a flood. And honestly, you can't even be mad. But the court takes it seriously. Why? Because names have power. And when one person uses another's name before the gods, it creates an imbalance. Like borrowing someone's prayer. The sentence: ceremonial separation. For 7 days they must dress differently, live apart, and wear clay pendants etched with unique identifying marks, until their identities are once again distinct in the eyes of the gods. You might call this early ID verification. The pendants are handed over, small, smooth, shaped like raindrops. One marked with a lion, the other a sparrow. They bow and accept them with sheepish smiles. And finally, to close this long series of odd rituals, a man is called forward and made to recite the oath of the ash pit. It's a rare formality used when someone re-enters society after exile. He kneels before a shallow pit of sacred ash, speaks his new vow aloud, to cause no harm, to balance scales, to offer salt at the next eclipse. Then he wipes a line of ash across his brow and walks through the temple's eastern gate. Forgiven. For now. You watch him go, and then sit, listening, as the torches crackle softly and the walls breathe with silence. Justice here isn't swift, or cruel, or even fair sometimes. But it is unforgettable. The ash pit still smoulders faintly when the next name is called. You watch the soft grey haze rise and disappear like a final whisper, trailing after the man who just left. Someone sweeps the temple floor in wide, slow strokes. The broom is made of bound reeds, and it moves more like a paintbrush than a cleaning tool. Everything here is deliberate, even dust is part of the performance. Now something new. 2 men are brought forward, one short and stiff, the other tall and visibly irritated. The scribe reads the charge, and this time it's hard not to grin. A dispute over a broken cartwheel. Yes. One of them lent a wheel to the other, and it was returned split, warped by water. The borrower says it was fine when he gave it back. The lender insists it came back like soggy firewood. There's no way to prove the truth. And so the judge opts for a solution that could only be born from the Sumerian blend of performance, symbolism, and sand. He calls for a ritualized mudslinging match. Yes, literally. Here's how it works. A marked circle is formed in the center of the courtroom. Within it, 2 bowls are set down, one filled with temple-blessed sand, the other with fine ash. Each man is handed a lump of wetted earth. Not clay, not stone, just mud. They are to take turns throwing the mud not at each other but at targets shaped like cartwheels, made of woven straw standing just inside the circle. Whoever hits the center more often is deemed truthful. You want to scoff, you really do, but no one else does. In fact, a group of elderly women sitting nearby lean forward with intense focus. This is entertainment, also justice. The throws begin. The shorter man hits his mark with surprising precision. The taller one overcompensates, twice missing entirely. The crowd oos politely. After 6 throws each, the score is tallied, 4-2 in favour of the lender. Verdict? The borrower is fined half a goat's worth of barley and must deliver a new cartwheel within 3 days. A ritual marker is placed on his household door, a small piece of broken straw affixed with pitch, to signal debt and repair in progress. Historians still argue about the function of these mud trials. Some believe it was a pressure valve, a chance for people to air grievances without long-form drama. Others suggest it trained accuracy for both justice and future warfare. Either way, nobody throws mud quite like a Sumerian with a grudge. And now, something quieter. A widow enters, slow and calm. Her eyes are dry, but you can tell they've wept before. The charge is not against her. It's hers to bring. She accuses a merchant of selling her watered-down oil during her husband's funeral preparations. This is a serious claim. Funeral offerings are sacred. Impurity in burial rites. That's cosmic disrespect. The merchant protests, says the oil was standard, but there's no way to prove it now. The ceremony's long past, the oil long burned. The judge pauses, and then calls for the taste of memory ritual. You haven't seen this one before. The widow is handed a bowl of the same type of oil, scented with cedar and myrrh. She must taste it, and declare whether it matches what she remembers. If she says no and holds to it under repeated questioning, the merchant will be fined. The risk? Memory can falter, but spiritual memory, the kind connected to grief, is considered sharpest of all. She sips. She frowns. She says, "This is thicker. This is clean." The priest asks again, and again. Her answers don't change. The judge doesn't hesitate. The merchant is fined 1 silver bead and must provide 2 full jars of pure oil to the temple for future funerals. The widow bows and leaves without a backward glance. You watch the merchant sink to his knees, probably more from shame than loss. The scribe etches the outcome. Somewhere on a drying tablet, that moment is forever recorded. A woman remembered, a merchant paid. You wonder what they'll say of you if you ever earn a line on clay. The next case is whispered. You almost miss the scribe's words. A temple cook is accused of swapping out a sacred meal's ingredients, replacing imported lentils with local ones to keep the difference. That's not just kitchen fraud, that's ritual disruption. The gods were meant to taste something specific. Now they've been served the Mesopotamian equivalent of off-brand cereal. But the cook protests. He insists the change was approved by a priest who has since left the city. With no evidence, and the priest unreachable, the judge orders a strange form of penance. He must cook the same meal again, under supervision, using only ingredients chosen by the court. It's not a punishment of pain, but of exactness. He must prepare the dish by moonrise, following strict rules. 7 lentils per bowl, 1 pinch of imported salt, no substitutions. If it's perfect, he'll be cleared. If not, he will offer 1 week's labour in the kitchen and a grain tithe. He nods, accepting. Honestly, he looks a little excited, like a chef finally getting to prove himself. The case will resume after the meal. In the meantime, another woman is brought forward. She holds a tiny clay tablet, no bigger than your palm. It's cracked, and the scribe squints to read it. She's requesting the reversal of a love binding. Yes, a spell, carved into clay by a scribe for hire, designed to make someone fall in love with her brother. The object of affection didn't return the feelings, and now the spell is considered unjust. This is niche, delicate. The priest doesn't scold her. Instead, the judge allows a ritual reversal. The original tablet must be buried upside down in a barley field with a crushed pomegranate over it. The hope is that the spell will rot away, just like a bad seed. She accepts. The clay is carried out, a new start forged in pomegranate pulp, and then, to end the cycle of judgments in this strange and muddy section of the night, the cook returns. He presents 6 steaming bowls, all ingredients measured. The priest tastes. The judge tastes. A long silence, then a single nod. He's cleared. But, he adds voluntarily, he'll still tithe 1 basket of grain. For the trouble, he says. The judge smiles, just slightly. Justice here doesn't always mean punishment. Sometimes it means owning the error before it becomes a sentence. You sit still, letting it all sink in. Mudslinging, hash tasting, love unspelled, balance in all its strange and dusty glory. And still. The night continues. It's well past midnight now, though no one's keeping time, not in the way you're used to. Here, time is marked by the length of trials, by the number of oil refills in the temple sconces, by how many goats have passed through the courtroom floor, and right on cue another goat is led in. But this isn't for punishment. No, this is a witness. You rub your eyes. The scribe declares the next trial, a dispute between 2 herders. One claims that the other stole his ceremonial goat during a festival procession. The accused denies everything, swearing he hasn't seen the goat since the last moon, and insists that the animal the accuser now parades is actually his goat. You brace for something wild, and you get it. The judge calls for the courtroom goat oracle, again. But unlike last time, where a goat randomly selected a verdict with bowls of grain, this test is behavioural. The goat will decide by how it reacts to each man. Yes, really. A small square is drawn in the dust. Each man is to stand at opposite ends of the space. The goat is set free in the middle. The theory? The goat will naturally return to its rightful keeper. You'd laugh, but everyone is watching this with reverent silence. You do too. The goat sniffs, circles, pauses. Then, to everyone's surprise, it walks, away from both men and directly into a corner to chew on a hanging reed mat. The crowd shifts uncomfortably. The judge waits a moment, then declares the test inconclusive. A new sentence is handed down. Both men must care for the goat jointly for 1 month. At the end of the cycle, a priest will observe which name the goat responds to. Yes, you heard that right. The goat gets a name. The name it chooses becomes legally binding. Historians still argue whether this was justice, absurdity, or a kind of magical realism baked into Sumerian bureaucracy. One theory suggests goats were used not for their divine connection, but because their unpredictability forced people into cooperation. You glance over and see the men glaring at each other. One mutters, "She better not answer to your name." You almost hope for a goat naming rematch in a month. Now comes a quieter case. A woman steps forward, hands ink-stained. She's a scribe herself, a rare position for a woman, though not unheard of in Sumer. She's here to report a copying error in a sacred tablet. That's bold. The tablet apparently was transcribed during a storm, and in the chaos, one line of a hymn to the goddess Ninhursag was miswritten. Instead of praising her womb of mountains, the line came out as womb of onions. You bite your lip. The room does not laugh. Miswriting a sacred line is serious, but confessing it voluntarily, that's a different kind of reverence. The judge nods approvingly, then offers a choice. She can either have her ink hand marked with a die symbol for public correction, or she may write a new hymn, 10 lines long, original, and ritually appropriate, to be sung at the next lunar gathering. She chooses the hymn. The judge grants her a window of 3 days. A stylus and tablet are handed over on the spot. You catch a glimpse of the title she's already carving, to the mountain that birthed all winds, poetic. Probably not about onions. There's something deeply human in this, fixing mistakes not with silence or denial, but with creation. Next comes a man in layered linen, flanked by two grim-looking merchants. They accuse him of using temple weight stones for his personal trade, scales calibrated by priests, borrowed without permission. That's more than theft. That's tampering with divine balance. The judge reacts swiftly. The punishment? The man must submit to the weighting ritual. He'll be placed on a large wooden scale, literally, and counterbalanced with measured offerings of grain, copper, and stone. If the scales tip unevenly, it's symbolic confirmation of his imbalance. The setup is built in front of you. It's not metaphorical. Two temple assistants help him onto a broad flat platform. His weight is estimated, recorded, and counted, and it's uneven, slightly, barely, but enough. He must now offer 2 basket loads of barley to restore the balance. One for the temple, one for the people. He doesn't argue, just nods and steps off the platform with a new stiffness in his gait. Historians call this a proto-economic corrective, where crime against trade is met with ritualized economic loss. Some scholars think it evolved into formal taxation law. Others believe it was entirely symbolic, not meant to be practical but performative. Either way, the balance is restored. And now, a strange little interlude. A young girl, no more than 10, is brought forward. Not accused, but recognized. Apparently, during a recent festival, she spoke a spontaneous prayer so beautiful that a priestess wept and wrote it down. The court calls her forward to recite it again. She's shy, but brave. The scribe hands her the clay tablet and she reads aloud in a quiet, steady voice. The words speak of wind and trees and a river that forgives. You feel something tighten in your chest. It's not just pretty, it's true. The judge smiles. She's given a temple ribbon dyed purple and told to wear it during holy days. She's now officially recorded as a voice of the reed. That means if she ever speaks again in moments of ritual, it must be listened to. Not blindly, but attentively. You think about all the judgments you've seen. So many punishments, so many trials, and now this, a reward, recognition, a voice, etched into clay. The court is quiet, then the judge rises, a rare move. He looks out over the crowd, then gestures toward the final case of this cycle. A man enters with heavy steps. His offense is ancient and strange. He refused to burn the ritual incense on the anniversary of his father's passing, not from hatred, but because he didn't believe in the gods. The temple does not punish disbelief. But neglecting a ritual? That's different. It isn't about faith, it's about continuity. The judge offers a different kind of penance. He must tend the incense fire for 7 mornings, not as belief, but as practice. He doesn't have to speak, just watch the flame, feed it, let it rise. Sometimes in Sumer, watching was enough. The man nods, and the court is dismissed, for now. You sit quietly, feeling the weight of everything. Goat verdicts, sacred typos, barley scales, a child who made the temple cry. Justice here is never one thing. It's many small balances, layered like bricks in a ziggurat, and you're only just reaching the upper tiers. You're no longer sure if your eyes are tired or simply adjusting to the rhythm of torchlight justice. The flickering shadows on the walls now feel like part of the process, dancing witnesses to every vow, every punishment, every goat-based verdict. This next case is announced with a hush, is announced. The scribe's voice is lower, slower. A woman, middle-aged, clothed in a healer's wrap, steps forward. Her charge is rare but serious, gossiping about a temple birth ritual. Specifically, she repeated details of a priestess's labor, a sacred event meant to be kept in ritual secrecy during a market day conversation over lentils. You glance around. Even the goat seems offended. In Sumer, gossip wasn't just idle chatter. Words had weight. Spoken truths, especially about divine matters, could ripple through the unseen world. Slandering, mocking, or even revealing too much could unbalance that fragile harmony between gods and humans. The punishment? Not lashing, not exile. It's silence, enforced silence. For 3 full days, the woman will live in a whispering chamber inside the temple complex. It's a small, echo-prone room designed for one purpose: to surround the offender with repeated whisperings of her own misdeed. You don't speak, you listen, you absorb. Priests will pass through at intervals, reciting the same phrase over and over. The mouth betrayed the womb. It's haunting, poetic, and yes, effective. Historians still argue whether these whispering chambers were real or metaphorical. But references to them exist in more than one archive. The idea of silence as penance isn't unique, but here it's made ritual, made tactile. She bows, says nothing. That's already begun. The priest leads her out. The court breathes in again. Next comes a craftsman. Broad shoulders, ink-stained fingers, and a permanent squint from years of kiln smoke. His crime? Mocking the form of a temple idol. To be clear, he didn't damage it. He didn't alter it. He just said, loudly, that it looked like a duck stuck in a thundercloud. Not the most respectful critique. And so, the sentence is also sculptural. He must carve a new idol, one so beautiful that it balances his offence. But here's the trick. It must be of the same deity, and it must follow exact ritual proportions, which are known only to the temple priests. He won't be told the measurements in advance. He'll be guided step by step, in silence, under supervision. Every stroke he carves must be deliberate, measured, in rhythm with chants. The process will take days, maybe longer, and when it's done, both statues will stand side by side, his and the original. If the new one is found worthy, the old one will be respectfully retired to the temple crypt, justice through replacement, but only if earned. A fringe theory among scholars suggests this ritual was both punishment and recruitment, a way to filter for new artisans through crisis. Some of Sumer's finest sacred sculptures may have started as court-mandated redemptions. The craftsman accepts the task with a grunt and is led away toward the courtyard kiln. Then comes a young man, nervous, pale, holding a basket filled with torn reed mats. He's not accused of a crime, he's confessing one. He says that during the last storm he broke into the temple storage hut to seek shelter. He didn't steal, he didn't disturb anything sacred. But he slept there, wrapped in the priest's festival garments. He places them before the judge now, cleaned, folded, but undeniably used. The judge doesn't hesitate. The sentence, sand-carrying ritual. The young man must carry sand from the riverbank to the temple steps, basket by basket, until he has rebuilt the storage hut's floor from scratch. Each trip is symbolic, a journey of return, from water to worship, from storm to order, and it's not easy. The baskets are heavy. The sun will rise soon. But the judge allows the young man to bless each load of sand before he carries it. That's something rare. Grace embedded in punishment. You shift, letting your shoulders relax. There's something calming about these sentences. Even when they sting, they're rarely cruel, just corrective. Next comes an older man, his back bent, hair grey and sparse. His charge? Teaching false astrology to children. You suppress a smirk. It sounds minor, but in a world where the stars guide crops, wars and marriages, misleading others with fake star readings is a serious offence. He's accused of claiming that Venus was a sign of incoming rain and convincing two farmers to plant early. Their fields failed. The judge offers him a strange penance. He must spend 2 nights under the stars, supervised by temple astronomers, and copy by hand the correct charts for Venus's movements. Then he must deliver a public reading to the same children he misled. He bows deeply. His voice shakes when he says, "I thought it would help." The judge replies, "Truth needs no help, just clarity." He is led to the temple roof where a flat platform awaits, part observatory, part lesson. From now until sunrise, he will watch the heavens without speaking. And then, a louder case. A brewer is brought in. He's accused of mixing river water into his ale barrels. This isn't just bad business, it's sacred fraud. Beer is not just a beverage, it's a gift to the goddess Ninkasi, a link between work and rest, soil and soul. His sentence? Boil it. All of it. He must reboil every contaminated barrel over open flame until it bubbles and clears. It's not just a waste of fuel, it's a ritual purification, and it must be done before sunrise. Several assistants are called. Fires are lit in the outer courtyard. You hear the pots beginning to hiss. A scribe writes it down. The beer will speak again. You feel a strange fondness for this place. This courtroom of incense and ink, fire and forgiveness. Even mistakes taste of poetry here, and still the scroll of justice unrolls further. A woman now. Young. Tall. accused of wearing a funeral veil on a feast day, unaware, possibly, or a silent protest. That's what some whisper. The judge decides, not exile, not branding, but colour inversion. For 1 week she must wear colours opposite to every ritual she tends. Mourning at weddings, festival garb at temple fasts. Her presence will become a walking lesson, a visual reminder of the power of timing. It's strange, embarrassing, and weirdly elegant. She doesn't flinch, just nods once. Perhaps she knew this would happen. The scribes write quickly. The torchlight flickers low, and somewhere in the distance, a rooster begins to stir. Morning approaches, but Sumerian justice, it isn't done just yet. The glow of morning begins to seep through the narrow slits in the temple walls, thin golden threads sneaking into a world still ruled by firelight and shadow. You realise you've been awake for hours, sitting cross-legged in the judgment hall as time twisted around itself. But the court doesn't sleep. It simply adjusts its posture. The judge remains seated, still as stone. The scribes blink a little more now, rubbing their eyes, stretching their fingers. Even the goats look tired. But the next case has already begun. A man is brought in, a potter, judging by the smears of red clay on his arms. He's quiet, calm, though the scribe's voice trembles just slightly as the charge is read. He sculpted a vessel with a forbidden mark. Not a political symbol, not a blasphemous image, just a stylized bird, a crest once associated with a banished family line. To you, it's an innocent doodle. But to Sumerian eyes, it's dangerous, like resurrecting an old war with 3 lines of decoration on a vase. The punishment? Branding. Again. But this one isn't with fire, it's with ink. Here's how it works. A burnt reed is dipped in black dye, usually made from soot, fish oil and crushed walnut, and then pressed against the skin in a single stroke, usually on the forearm. A mark not to wound, but to identify. This particular symbol is not cuneiform, but a circle with a broken line. It means strayed. The idea is not to shame, but to warn, to signal that this person once crossed the border of accepted memory. You watch as the priest presses the reed to the potter's arm. It stains immediately, bold, wet, dark. He does not cry out. He simply bows, accepts a cloth to wrap his forearm, and leaves. Some historians believe these marks faded within a few weeks. Others claim they were reapplied until no one forgot. A few fringe theories suggest these temporary tattoos inspired early versions of criminal record-keeping. Ancient bureaucracy, in skin. Next, a more peculiar trial. A man and woman, siblings it turns out, stand in the centre of the hall. The sister accuses the brother of cutting down their family's sacred fig tree to make a bench. He doesn't deny it. But he claims the tree was dying, already hollow. It's a family dispute. But in Sumer, sacred trees aren't private. They're spiritual anchors, especially those grown from funeral offerings. The judge listens carefully, then rules that the spirit of the tree must be relocated. The punishment? A blend of labour and symbolism. The brother must carve a new fig branch staff from what remains of the trunk. He must anoint it with oil, wrap it in linen and carry it to the city's edge, where he'll plant a new fig sapling, watered with 1 week's worth of his own sweat, collected during physical labour for the temple. It's half punishment, half poetry. The sister accepts the decision. The brother sighs but does not argue. Justice in Sumer isn't about compensation. It's about continuity. Breaking a chain means forging the next link yourself. Next up, a child. Small, nervous, cradling something under his tunic. The charge? He stole a flute from the temple musicians, took it during a festival and played it in the fields. You brace for something dramatic. But the judge simply calls for a listening ritual. The boy is asked to play the flute. You blink. He does. Hesitantly at first, then with surprising grace. The tune is simple, trembling with morning stillness. A reed melody that flutters like moth wings. When he finishes, the judge speaks. Not a verdict, but a question. Did the music honour the gods? A pause, then a slow nod from the temple musician who lost the flute. Yes, she says quietly. The boy is forgiven, but only if he carves a new flute for the temple, and one more for another child yet to come, who might also be drawn to music and mischief. A gentle sentence, a circle of sound, Now, a different kind of ritual unfolds. A man who missed his temple's sweeping rotation, a community duty, stands awkwardly, holding a broom as if hoping that alone will clear his name. He's not fined, he's not cursed, he's given a ritual redirection. He must sweep not just any floor, but the floor of the inner scribal chamber, where dust is considered sacred. He must treat each speck as a fragment of divine words, collecting them with soft linen, never disturbing the writing stones. It's a lesson in reverence, a reminder that even service, when neglected, becomes spiritual imbalance. He bows, suddenly more humbled than if he'd been whipped. And now, a more theatrical scene. A man accused of mocking a public omen. Specifically, he imitated a bird cry during a thunderclap and claimed it meant the gods were laughing. Everyone heard it. It went viral by Sumerian standards. The judge chooses a curious sentence: ritual reenactment. He must now spend a full day as a temple crier, announcing every actual omen, real or invented, interpreted by the priesthood. In full ceremonial voice. He begins at dawn, his first cry. The east wind has changed. Someone must be cooking lentils too quickly. The crowd chuckles. But by midday the humour will fade, the voice will grow hoarse, and the weight of speaking the sacred will begin to settle on his shoulders. That's the point. Next comes a woman accused of drawing her own astrological chart without permission from the temple astronomers. That might sound silly, but Sumerians took charts seriously. The stars weren't for personal doodles. They were maps of fate owned by the divine. The sentence? She must donate a full scroll of papyrus, imported and valuable, for the temple archive. And then, under guidance, she must draw 3 correct charts, each supervised, each offered as learning, not as magic. You watch her nod, already thinking through calculations in her head. Maybe her real punishment is having to admit she got Mars and Saturn mixed up. And now, something soft. A woman requests permission to rename her daughter, now aged 10. The original name, given in grief after a lost childbirth, translates roughly to regret in rain. But the girl, she says, is joyful, kind, nothing like the grief of her name. The judge grants the request, but not without a name-cleansing ritual. They must walk to the edge of the city at twilight, press the girl's feet in river mud, and wash them with grain water. Then the mother will whisper the new name 3 times, song over clay. The scribe etches both names into a clay tablet. The old one is left blank on the final line, erased with a damp cloth, and just like that, the name is gone. Justice here isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about letting things grow toward who they really are. You sit quietly, heart full, eyes soft, watching as the torchlight flickers for what might be the final time tonight. But the court is still not done, not quite. The temple walls are stained with the early warmth of day, but the air inside remains heavy and timeless, like breath held between sentences. You've stopped trying to guess when it will end. The court doesn't move by hours, it moves by balance, by when the scale of justice finally settles enough to allow sleep. But not yet. A man is brought forward, tall, well kept, though his sandals are coated in ash. The scribe reads his charge carefully. Blasphemous speech during a storm. He'd stood under his roof's awning, shouted into the wind, and according to 3 witnesses, declared that even the gods would run from this rain. Now, maybe that was just fear, or sarcasm, or grief. The storm had torn his vineyard clean in 2, but in Sumer, weather isn't weather, it's message, omen, divine hand. The judge considers, then rules that the man must endure the tomb sleep penalty. You've heard whispers of it before, now you see it enacted. He's to spend a full night alone in the family tomb, not for the dead, but with the dead, a symbolic penance. The theory is simple, in a way only Sumerian logic can be. If you speak wrongly of the gods, perhaps the ancestors can correct your tongue. He doesn't protest. The tomb is prepared, swept, lit with a single oil lamp. A mat is laid near the sarcophagi, and a clay bowl of grain water left beside it. Nothing more. As he's led away, a priest murmurs, if he dreams, he must report it. Apparently, dreams in the tomb are recorded, sometimes as visions, sometimes as warnings, occasionally as evidence in future cases. Historians still debate whether these punishments were more spiritual cleansing or just intense psychological pressure. The lines in Sumer blur often. They prefer symbols to scalpel edges. You wonder if the man will sleep at all. Next comes a case with more movement. A pair of temple dancers, both accused of altering their steps during a sacred performance. One turned left instead of right, the other raised her arms before the music changed. Harmless? Maybe? But the dance was dedicated to Inanna, and precise gestures matter. Movement is devotion. The sentence is surprisingly creative. They must perform the same dance again, but this time blindfolded. No music, no audience, just ritual memory. A priest will tap a drum at 3 intervals. Their task, to move exactly as the original dance dictated, from memory in perfect synchronization. They're led into the center of the room. Linen bands are tied over their eyes. The floor is cleared. You watch as they take their starting positions. Tap. They begin. It's beautiful, almost weightless, like watching birds remember how to fly in the dark. There's a slight misstep near the end, a pause too long, but overall, graceful, confident. When the blindfolds are removed, the judge nods once. Balance restored. They bow and are dismissed. There's something elegant about this justice, how it allows repair through repetition. Not far behind, a much heavier case follows. A man has violated boundary law. He placed his property marker across a neighbour's threshing floor, not by accident, but with full knowledge. Land here isn't just dirt, it's inheritance, it's pride. The judge rules decisively. He must now lie beside the boundary stone for a full day, sunrise to sunset, without speaking, without shade, and with a clay weight pressed on his chest. Not heavy enough to harm, just enough to remind him. Every breath will require effort. The idea, if you try to move the earth for your gain, you must carry the weight of that shift until the gods say otherwise. Some modern scholars refer to this as static penance, a literal stillness. The earth stays still, so must you. He bows, says nothing. He's led outside and positioned next to the stone, already warming in the sun. The next case, thankfully, is lighter. A boy, 11, maybe 12, is brought in after having accidentally kicked a prayer tablet while playing in the courtyard. Not malicious, just clumsy. The tablet shattered. The judge doesn't scold. Instead, he calls for a restoration game. The boy is handed the broken pieces. He must reassemble the tablet like a puzzle, not to reuse, but to learn. As he pieces it together, a priest recites the original prayer aloud. Each time he connects 2 shards, the priest pauses. By the end, the boy knows the whole prayer, word for word. By accident or fate, he's forgiven. And, in a twist, assigned a scribe to teach him basic cuneiform, just in case he wants to write prayers instead of break them. You smile. Justice by jigsaw. Not bad. Now comes an older woman, her back straight despite age. Her charge, hoarding salt during a communal fast. Not much, just a small bag buried near her cooking fire. But in times of scarcity, even small betrayals feel large. She confesses immediately, offers the salt up, but the judge still imposes ritual. She must now wash her cooking pots at the public well for 7 days, at noon, the hottest hour. A symbolic act of cleansing, not just of vessels, but of intention. The idea, your kitchen holds your soul. She accepts. You get the sense she already knew this was coming. And now, a ritual of sand and ash. 2 men who fought over a grain shipment, each blaming the other for a lost cartload, are made to perform what's called the justice game. You've heard of it. Now you see it. A square is drawn in the dirt, half filled with sand, half with ash. In the centre, a smooth black stone. They must race, without running, to move the stone from one side to the other, each trying to keep it in their half for 5 full breaths. It's bizarre, slow, like competitive meditation. They shuffle, push, nudge with bare feet. The crowd is entranced. In the end, the stone settles in the ash, just barely. That man wins. The other is fined a single barley jar. Not much. Enough to say, you move too slow in both life and justice. And finally, a priest enters. But not to accuse or be accused. He brings a jar. Inside, a tooth. Found during temple renovations, buried near the offering altar. Likely left from a tooth offering ritual, a child's first lost tooth given to the gods. But the jar has no name, no inscription, no record. The court is asked to give it closure. So they do. The judge calls for a whispering send-off. The scribe reads a generic blessing while the tooth is burned with cedar over a small flame. It cracks once, sharply, like a forgotten voice being acknowledged, and that's it. A child's tooth, a final verdict. The court, at last, stills. The judge places his reed stylus flat. The scribes begin to close their tablets. The goats, those strange accidental oracles, are led outside to graze, and you remain. Because even though morning has come, one final case, the night itself must now be laid to rest. Outside, the sky has softened into pale gold. Morning birds flit between rooftop gardens, and the first hints of temple smoke rise into the air, not from punishments now, but from offerings, newly lit for a fresh day. Inside the courtroom, however, the rhythm of judgment still hums like the faint echo of a gong struck hours ago. But something's different now. The pace slows. The scribe's voice is quieter. Even the judge leans forward slightly, resting his elbow on one knee, as though, for the first time in hours, the weight of balance is beginning to rest on him too. Another figure enters. This one is a messenger. Not a criminal, not a priest, not a petitioner. He carries a clay envelope, sealed with the mark of a distant city. It's an official inquiry. A neighbouring temple accuses this court of miscalculating a shared debt involving ceremonial grain. In other words, a lawsuit between temples. Now, this is rare and delicate. Instead of launching into judgment, the Sumerian court calls for a ritual of clarity known as the Ashwalk Agreement. Here's how it works. A scribe pours fine grey ash over a long narrow mat. 2 representatives, one from each temple, are to walk its length barefoot. The ash is sacred and must remain undisturbed. Each step must be slow, even humble. If one falters, stumbles, or leaves a smudge, the gods have declared them unworthy to speak further. The other's claim prevails by default. You see the wisdom in it. It's not about skill or trickery. It's about poise, patience, and balance. Qualities required for keeping harmony between cities. The 2 men are summoned, robes tied, ankles bared. The mat is prepared. The ash glistens like moonlight caught on dust. First step, then another. Each foot sinks just enough to leave an impression, but not enough to smear. You hold your breath. They complete the walk perfectly. No smudges, no slips. A rare event. In such a case, the judge declares a tie, balance in both hands. Each temple will cancel the other's debt, and a joint offering will be made to the goddess Nisaba, patron of scribes and order. You watch as the clay envelope is shattered, symbolically breaking the tension. The shards will be mixed into temple plaster. Even dispute becomes material for future strength. You stretch your back, shift your legs. Surely now it's ending. Not quite. Another man is brought in, this one sweating profusely, dragging a small wooden cart behind him. The charge? Pretending to be a wounded veteran to receive extra rations. You'd think the system would be simple. Check the records. Verify his scars. But this is Sumer. The court uses a role-play ritual called the Justice Game of the Wounded. Here's the method. The accused must reenact a temple battlefield blessing, performed only for real veterans, while carrying a sandbag equal to his alleged injury weight. If he falters during the chant, forgets the steps, or shows no signs of actual discomfort, the gods, and the court, will know. He kneels, lifts the sandbag onto his shoulders, begins to walk the spiral drawn on the courtroom floor. It mimics the battlefield path from chaos to temple, from survival to offering. He doesn't get far. Halfway through the chant, he stumbles. The bag drops. He mutters the wrong line. Verdict: false claimant. Sentence: 3 days of real labour hauling grain carts for the temple. No acting, no shortcuts. And his food will come last, not first. Justice here doesn't just punish dishonesty, it flips it. Teaches through embodied inversion. The man bows, less from humility than from exhaustion, and is led away. Then comes a moment of unusual stillness. The next case is not one of crime, but of incompletion. A man enters carrying a small cuneiform tablet he never finished carving. Years ago, as a young apprentice, he was tasked with inscribing a hymn to the moon god Sin. He failed to finish it. No one was punished, nothing exploded. But the temple record is incomplete, and today, in this court, he's chosen to make it whole. This isn't a sentence, it's a voluntary closure. The court grants him a corner of the chamber, a new stylus and time. He bows, sits cross-legged, and begins to carve the final lines. Everyone watches, silent, as if waiting for an old chord to finally resolve. The words he writes are gentle. The moon returns even to what is broken. Light reshapes the edge of yesterday. When he finishes, the judge himself stands and reads it aloud, a rare honour. Then he places the completed tablet on a shelf marked Balanced Histories. And now, one final ripple in the pool. 2 priests enter, each carrying a mask, identical in form, made of baked clay and painted in gold and lapis. They represent divine neutrality, used only in the rarest of cases, the final sentence under moonlight. This is the ancient ritual that ends a cycle of judgments. No trial, no crime, just balance enacted through performance. The masks are worn by 2 temple dancers, man and woman each dressed in mirrored robes. They walk the square of the court in opposite directions, weaving in and out of light and shadow, performing gestures of offering, rejection, mercy and silence. It's a summary, a dance of everything that happened. As they finish, they meet in the centre. The masks are removed. The judge speaks a final phrase. What was scattered is gathered. Let the city breathe. The scribes blow out their lamps. The court falls silent, not because justice is over, but because it has been witnessed again in full. Outside, the day brightens. You hear temple bells, vendors beginning their songs, and inside, you stay for one moment more, because something ancient has finished turning, and you were here for all of it. The temple hall is empty now, not vacant, just full of stillness, the kind that only comes after something sacred has passed through. The scent of ash lingers faintly in the air, mingled with beeswax and barley dust. A reed mat creaks as someone folds it. Somewhere nearby, sandals whisper across stone. You remain seated, as if the act of rising would undo all that's been witnessed. Your legs ache, your thoughts feel slow and syrupy, but your mind is full, overflowing with goat verdicts, ash rituals, reed flutes, and the quiet logic of a world built on scales, symbols, and second chances. Outside, the sunlight has taken over completely. You see it pouring through the temple gates in long, clear beams. Chickens cluck in the distance. A wheel squeaks as it turns. And yet, one last figure enters. He's elderly, bones like branches, eyes like faded ink. He walks with a staff, carved with years instead of symbols. No one announces him. He doesn't need it. He carries a scroll, tightly bound, sealed with wax. It's a final testimony, a legal confession, written in his own hand to be read after his death. He wants it witnessed, not judged, not punished, just heard. The scroll is unsealed. A priest reads it slowly. It's a quiet record of one mistake, an argument, long ago, over land that wasn't his. A fence moved, a neighbour left, a bitterness that outlived the fence itself. I cannot change it, he writes, but I leave this for balance, not for pardon. Let my barley be measured thinner next season. Let my house face the wind. No sentence follows, just a closing stamp. He made it known. That, here, is enough. He nods once and walks away. His sandals scuff the floor in a rhythm that feels older than time, and with that, it's over, truly. The scribes tie shut their tablets. The last oil lamp is snuffed. The walls breathe out. You close your eyes. Now, let's let go, gently. So now, let yourself lie back. The torches have burned low. The reed mats have been rolled away. The echo of ancient footsteps has faded into silence. Breathe in slowly. You've walked through 1,000 years tonight. Listen to the whispers of judges, the rhythm of priestly footsteps, the rustle of goat hooves and barley baskets. You've stood in the shadow of ziggurats, watched stars traced across clay, and sat beside a court that never forgot the weight of a single word. Let those images melt. Let the dusty court dissolve. The smell of ash and cedar fades now, replaced by the soft hum of whatever quiet surrounds you. Maybe a ceiling fan, maybe the breeze through an open window, maybe just the rhythm of your own breath. Steady, slow, enough. You're safe here. You've seen that justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it drips like ink. Sometimes it walks barefoot through ashes. Sometimes it's just a name spoken softly at the right time. Let your shoulders fall. You don't need to carry the weight of a reed stylus or kneel beside a clay tablet. You're not being judged. You're just resting. And even in the ancient courts of Sumer, rest was part of justice too. So let the night end. The stone floor has cooled. The goats have been led away. The scribes have dipped their hands in lavender water and gone home to sleep. And now, so will you. Good night, 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 you.